So when you have to move a mountain, you have to start by carrying stones, right? And that's very a simple way to put on, like, if you have a big target to achieve, you would have to start small, look at what's missing, what can I do here.
Hi, I'm Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this video, I was joined by Bhupinder Singh, popularly known as Dynamic Singh, who's an engineering leader from Berlin. In our conversation, we sat down to talk about his challenges going through the interview process and what he had to turn around for himself in order to make progress. Now, as you probably noticed, in the bottom corner of your screen, there is an offer to get early access to the book that we're going to be talking about as we go through this conversation. If you're looking to drive improvements in your interview process, then stay tuned for this conversation for a little bit of a mindset shift. And you can check out Interview Champion to help level up your interview process. Let me know in the comments if you find this kind of content interesting, and I'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, I'm Bhupinder. I'm a tech professional living in Berlin, and I have a decade of experience in tech. I have worked at early stage startups, scale ups, tech unicorns, and one of the Fortune 100 companies. And fun fact about me is I started coding very early when I was 12, and I also competed in roller skating during my school days and won some medals too. And yeah, in my free time, I like to play squash, hang out with friends, try out new cuisines. I'm a big foodie, so yeah, that's a bit about me.
That's awesome. So you are a human outside of software engineering, right? You have other things that you do. You're not just coding nonstop. That's great to hear. I think some people have that confused that once you get into software engineering, like that's your personality for the rest of eternity. So very cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually very true. People think like that, like that software engineers are geeks. But I kind of differ to see differently that I'm more creative than like being especially like geek. I like to, I like to enjoy every sense of life, everything in life, experience everything, travel, learn a lot from people, learn about different cultures, learn about different languages, right? That's what gives a complete living experience as a human being. That's how I feel. And, like
Yep.
playing sports, I really enjoy that because I think the life, if you're born into life, you're not born into work, right? So work is a part of life, and that should be very important. That it's very important that you remember that.
Right. No, I think that's super important. In fact, like one of the tattoos, I can never show it on camera, but my tattoo on my forearm is actually about that, to remind myself like there's more to life than just working, right? Just to get the paycheck and stuff. So I that resonates with me. I had a question though, and you said that you started programming at 12, which I think for some people they see that as like that's the traditional way, right? Like they'll look at people in software engineering and they go, man, like that person, it's like basically as soon as they could walk, they were programming. Like I don't stand a chance because, I might be 20 years old now thinking that I want to get into software engineering. Can you maybe comment about like how you started early? That's awesome. But like what did that look like? How did you transition from that into being like, this is something I know I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more. I definitely feel I'm blessed in that sense because it didn't happen like one day I woke up and I decided I will be a software engineer. Or I was
Sure.
very curious when I saw like a computer in my school lab back in the days, and then my mom gifted me a computer, and then I stumbled upon. I started, start playing around it and figure out like how the paint works. MS Paint was a big thing back in the days, right? And then I started. There was, you if you remember, there was Windows 2000, Windows XP. If you go on the C drive, you would see like hidden files. Don't delete anything, that
Right.
kind of a thing.
Oh,
And I
please.
so I was like, let's delete it, man. Let's see what happens. So I was always in the sense to see what's on the other side of the road. Let's try it out. Let's figure it out. And I deleted that, and I realized it stopped working. So and
Ah.
and to my luck, like when something stops working, you have your computer under warranty. So we called the engineer. He came. He installed the Windows again, and I saw what was going on. So I checked what he is doing. Then I asked, like, why are you clicking on next all the time? What's the deal? Like, because I have no idea.
Right.
And back in the days, like they need to configure BIOS, and there were some settings related to BIOS which are required to reset the computer or something like that. So I was very curious, like what he was doing. There was a black screen, BIOS. I was like, what is BIOS, like, right? And I started digging deeper into it. He went home, and immediately the same evening, I deleted all the Windows file again. Because I had I had the CD to install the Windows, right, which you get when you buy a computer. So I did again the same steps again, and I was able to complete it. Then few days passed. I was gaming. I was playing. I think the Road Rash was one of the game back then,
Okay.
which was very NFS. Need for Speed was one of the games which I was very interested in back in the days. I mean, growing up, I played Age of Empires and all those kind of things.
Sure.
Yeah, and FIFA. FIFA is one of my favorite games. And yeah, so I started realizing, and then one day what happened was my computer started sounding quite a lot, and there was a fan sound which was
Okay.
going like as if like some processing was going crazy, but I was not able to figure out, like 2 years down the line, when I had computer, and then it came to me like, look, let's open this black box.
Right.
Like, and then back in the day, my mom had a Nokia phone with a camera N series something of that side. I opened the CPU, and I started recording like what is in it, and started removing
Right.
everything. It was very dusty, very bad. Maybe that's the reason it was sounding. The SMPS had some problem with it. Yeah, and I opened it up, cleaned it up, put it back, and yeah, and that's how really my curiosity led me to learn about computers. And then I went into looking into, there was a Sonic player back in the days, Winamp Sonic, if you remember. Then then
Yeah. Winamp for sure. I used Winamp a lot. Yep.
and then I started looking into their files, how to change the theme. Went into the I didn't know about anything about coding, so I used to just open the file in the text file and then try to understand what's going on. And then
Sure.
slowly and steadily learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So web was my first thing. So I built my first website when I was in eighth grade. So that was basically copying snippets from here and there of JavaScript snippets, trying to understand what's going on and seeing it's working
Yep.
without even really a great knowledge about JavaScript. And then slowly and steadily, I made my path. The curiosity led me to explore new things. And then here I am today. And then I did computer science engineering, which was really helpful in terms of data structures and stuff. But yeah,
Right.
that's a bit about my journey.
But before we move on, this is just a reminder that I do have courses available on Dome Train if you want to level up in your C# programming. If you head over to Dome Train, you can see that I have a course bundle that has my getting started and deep dive courses on C#. Between the two of these, that's 11 hours of programming in the C# language, taking you from absolutely no programming experience to being able to build basic applications. You'll learn everything about variables, loops, a bit of async programming, and object-oriented programming as well. Make sure to check it out.
That's cool though. I think something you said that's very interesting, and I've seen people kind of go this route. Like a lot of people that are like more junior or aspiring to be, I want to get into software engineering, that kind of thing. It's always like, what books do I read? What language? What tech stack? And it's like they want to jump into the theory part. And something you said that was very interesting is I was just copying code from different spots, trying to put it together. And I have seen, I have a good friend of mine who, if you were to ask him, can you program? He would say, absolutely not. But I've been, over the past almost 2 years now, I have watched him put together things that are very much like you need to be able to program, but he won't admit it because what he's doing is taking things from different places and mashing them together. And I'm like, man, like that is programming. Like you're taking code from other spots and making these things combine. So I've seen people have great success using that as like their kickoff point. Like they get something that starts to work, especially if there's a visual component like having a website. And then from there, as they want to keep building stuff, they do need to refine their skills. They're like, okay, I have something that works, but it's slow. okay, what do I do? Like, how do I start optimizing things? Oh, why are we using this data structure versus this? Like, they kind of see these patterns over time, and then they start to refine. So I just thought it was interesting that you kind of, it seems like you had a similar experience where, you're just taking pieces and getting them to work. And that's the kickoff point. So very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I'm not sure. Like back in the days when I first uh, like got a computer class or whatever, we were learning a language that was based on the turtles and stuff. Turtle side and stuff like that. You need to move the turtle at one place. If you remember, was it COBOL? I'm not really sure, but I think it was
I have
COBOL.
not used COBOL, so
Yeah, that was the first thing which made me curious and to learn about how things work. And when I looked at
right,
my first web page, and I was like, if you remember, like when Craigslist launched and Google launched, right? I mean, they were initially launched, and I'm talking about those days. And I was very curious, like, how is this? I search for something and I see something, like, how is this happening, right? And
right,
then I just started going down to the rabbit hole. And I'm a very curious person in general, so if I hear a word which I have no idea about, I just dig deeper, and then I realize, and then I try to
right.
learn about it. And if I don't know about it, then I used to ask my teachers in the school. They were very helpful as well. So yeah, that's like, I think whatever success a person has, a lot of has to do with the people you come across, the environment you are in, and the things you come across. A lot of people also
Sure.
ignore stuff, and they never know what's going on. They hear, okay, whatever. But I think curiosity is a very big thing, I think. And yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you're not into software engineering yet and you're trying to see if it's a good fit for you or how do you start, like there are some, like a lot of people will say, oh well, it's math, right? Like you got to know math because programmer people, they're smart, and math people are smart, like it's got to be math. And it's like math is like a foundation for logical thinking, which is great, but you don't need strong math. And in fact, the you're listing things like curiosity, right? Like I would say curiosity, problem solving. There's so many of these other skills that become such a good foundational fit for getting into software engineering, and those can become your superpower, right? So for yourself, if you're curious, and like that is just an innate thing that you're always wanting to be curious and dive into things, that's so beneficial for debugging, for like root causing things when things are going wrong, because you don't just go, oh, like I think this might fix it on the surface. It's like, why is it broken? Like, how did this happen? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Like, there's the curiosity drives you so much further than just things on the surface. And like I said, that can become a superpower for software engineering. So there's so many different skill sets and things like that that you can lean into, and it doesn't have to be math. Like I think there's many other options.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you are good at like people, like children who play Lego, right? They have some kind of idea about how to join things, how to break things,
Right.
how to build up different structures, and that's a very important thing to have growing up. Like if you have played with some certain kind of similar things which require using your brain in that way, which is like problem solving. I think over the years, what I've realized is problem solving is one of the biggest thing if in the world. If someone has it, they can figure out whatever they want, because that's
Yeah.
very very useful skill, and it leads you to stumble upon a lot of opportunities. It leads you to figure out a lot of stuff on your own. It leads you to like learn a lot while you're just observing and looking at people. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. No, that's a great call though. Definitely problem solving. Would 100% agree with that. So I want to bring up, you got a book, and I wanted to mention that you have this book. I want you to talk about it a little bit, because I think a lot of the stuff that you and I were chatting about before that is guaranteed to come up. I think it will be good to have this book that you've put together as a reference point, because I think there's a lot of good things that you've captured in that. And like I said, I think as we chat through this, it will be good to mention like if that kind of is something covered in the book, or how your book might introduce those topics to people. So what's tell us about your book, what made you write it, and maybe we can kind of go from there.
Definitely. So, in 2020, like when the COVID happened, right? So a lot of organizations were impacted, and a lot of opportunities were also out there because a lot of organizations were also doing good, right? So some opportunities came
Sure.
my way, and what happened was I failed interviews for three organizations, although I was already working at a senior position. And frankly speaking, it doesn't matter what position you work on. If you're not ready for something, you will fail. That's pretty much it, right? uh, so I failed because of very minute steps, like in one of the interviews I was speaking fast. They were not able to understand really what I was saying. Maybe because everyone, it's not like everyone speaks English all across the world, and it's not their native language as well, right? it,
Good point.
yeah, so it's like it's not only about speaking English, it's also about grasping English, right? So if you are not a native speaker, it's not that easy to understand, and everyone has their own accent to pronounce things, right? So
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
yeah, so I got a rejection in like fifth round, which was like nothing to do with coding at all. And they said like, hey, the interview said you speak a bit fast, and that could be like trouble. People could have trouble understanding you. I'm like, what? This is the reason? So I had these small things which I have no idea about, and interview takes like 2 months for a big company, right? So I was interviewing for very big companies back then. And it takes 2 months, and especially when you've invested so much time and you let's say fail after 1.5 months in the last rounds, right? It just feels like, oh my god, it's very frustrating in a way, right? and
Right.
and especially when you are not you don't, especially when you're not ready for failures, because at certain time you're like, oh, I work in this organization, I can do whatever, and so on, right? But that's not the aspect I was but worried about. I was just uh, very very curious, and also I was very, in a way, in some proportion I was also frustrated because I failed those interviews, and I
Sure.
was like, wow, like what did I do really wrong? Like, these small things are like the deciding factors for like organizations. Like, of course I was taking interviews back in the days as well, and I was taking technical rounds. I do good in technical rounds, so there's no problem. I did good in technical rounds. But what about the other things, other aspects of it, right? And
Sure.
then I started interviewing and interviewing. Saw I got some offers, and later on I thought like I had some organizations in my mind, and I was like, let's get these done, because everyone wants to get an offer from a fan company, and everyone wants to,
Sure.
like, it's just I wanted to see, because I was preparing. I was trying to understand what are the things I am really not good at, and I was trying to search out different people, different resources, learn from them, and so on. And then I started seeing successes. Like, and one of the interviews
Mm.
I gave, like after, from the starting of the failure, from the 4 months down the line, I gave an interview for an organization, and I performed so well. The question was supposed to take like 20 minutes. No, the question was supposed to take like 1 hour, but I solved it within 20 minutes. And the guy who was taking my interview, he was so surprised. He was like, he thought like I kind of knew it. It was a question on recursion and backtracking. And I was like,
Sure.
oh, and he was like, let me give you another question. He gave me another question of a similar sort, and I solved it again. And he was very surprised, and then he started asking me like, hey, what do you I said like, hey, I also take interviews. Is I'm also, I see a lot of these questions, and I have worked very hard back in my days when I was starting my career, right? So I know the
Right.
basics. And then later on, the next round happened. The next round, so the that organization was supposed to have like 6 rounds in total, and this was like somewhere the second or the third round, right? So he gave the feedback, and the next round, surprisingly, somebody got absent, and the next round was taken by director of engineering. He told me like, I've heard good things about you, da da da, and he gave me a tricky question again, somehow, and I solved it again. And he was like, I've never seen someone code like that. I was like, I of course, I've been preparing from last 4 months for these kind of questions. Of course, it's a preparation. It's not I'm like super genius or something. I've prepared quite a lot, right? And then he said to me, like, tomorrow you'll get the offer. Don't worry about the next 2 rounds. I was like, wow. So that that day, I realized, like effort and hard work takes you a long way.
Mm,
And it's not really about which university or which company or where you have worked and so on. If you if you really prepare and you go for it and you give your blood, sweat, and everything you got, you can crack any organization. So in 2020, I also cracked one of the FANG organizations, and then later on, I went on to join Revolut. I really love fintech. I'm a really big fintech person. I really am a big fan of fintech. I because I totally believe money really enables the world to move, and that's the reality. And if you could work on something which really brings impacts on most of the life of the people or all of the people, that's
right.
really amazing. And I really got that opportunity to work there. So yeah, that's one of the reason I started with this book, because these all frustrations led me to think that there could be many people like me who will be failing and would have no idea why they are failing. And back
Right.
in the days, you would get simple responses like, we found a better candidate or something like that, and that doesn't help anyone, right? So what I did was, I took my time. Instead of writing a book in 2 months or 3 months and launching it, I took my time. I did my research. I talked with a lot of recruiters in my organization, my friends, people who are giving interviews, and tried to understand what are the difficulties they face, right? And I have taken roughly around more than 150 interviews so far in a decade, in the last few years, especially since I started interviewing. And I've given more
Mhm.
than 200 interviews as well in 10 years, more or less. I'm not even counting the HR interviews. Those, then it will go way more, right? So yeah, and then this was my main thought, and it came to me when I was meditating. So I do meditate from last 12 years now, and it came to me like, this could be something really that I could put my energy into and bring value to the people. Because
Right.
I truly believe at my core, like, whatever you have learned, you have to leave it here, and then you will die one day, and that's a sad reality. And
Right.
that's and what's the point of having an amazing life, learning from so many good people, talented people, coming across so many opportunities, and not giving back? So
Yep.
it's
It's a
just yeah, so it's just a way to share my knowledge and whatever I've learned, acquired from this world itself. It's not something I slept and I came up with the ideas. It's a pure research. It's what it works, and yeah, that's the book.
and I love that too, right? It's like the unfortunate sort of grim reality is like we don't live forever. We have a limited time, and there's people will talk about like their legacy and things like that, or you'll hear people say like someone was on their deathbed and they were reflecting on life, and it's like, I have so many regrets. I wish I did. Whatever things. And I think one of the best ways, in my opinion, that you can try to help mitigate those feelings is like having a fulfilling life that involves helping other people, because at the end of the day, like, you will cease to exist, and something that you can do that has impact is helping others, especially like you were saying, you're acquiring these skills, like this knowledge, this experience. Like, what better way than to try and help the other people that are experiencing the same things that you were going through, right? Like, how can you help those individuals, because you will understand them so well having gone through the same thing. So I think, I just wanted to say, I think that's I don't want to necessarily say like a noble thing, but I very much align with the idea that we have such a great opportunity to help other people, and we should take advantage of that. But something you had said along the way when you were describing the interview process, right? Like kind of leading you to getting to want to write this book. You talked about, and I don't want to gloss over it because I think it's critical. This idea that you had to prep, you had to put in hard work. It wasn't just like I'm going to apply, magically get the interview, magically it's going to work out. You had to be very consciously putting in effort. So what about interviewing is like a skill? Like why does it need effort? Why is it something you have to practice from your experience?
I mean, I mean, it's basically, I would say, it's a skill because you're not interviewing every day, and the important thing is what is asked in an interview. It depends on especially the size of the organization you're working for, right, or you're interviewing for. It really makes a big difference because let's say you're working in a startup, right, and you decide, oh, tomorrow I will join Amazon, right? And but the requirement and expectations and how Amazon works as an organization are way different than how a startup works. So, and they are interviewing from that expectations that someone would come and contribute to our product or our organization, right?
Okay.
So definitely you cannot like take it as in like I will wake up tomorrow and I did computer science engineering and let's get it rolling, right? uh, because there are a lot of rounds depending on the organizations, right? For example, even if you are a superstar in coding, right, but what about like engineering manager round? What about like technical interview? What about when you have an interview with the team members to check team vibe round, or a behavior interview, right? Or checking on the offers, or how to negotiate. These things are
Right.
big thing, right? Because you can always undersell yourself as well. So these all things are really important, and I named that this book Interview Champion, because it's not a book which I would say is not a typical book like you go and check it out for answers like, hey, are the 20 questions, behavioral questions, and you will learn this and you will give this answer and that'll be nice. Because the reason is, even if you crack the interview and you're not that person, that will be very difficult time for you in the organization.
That that is such a key point, and I think we should kind of focus on this for a moment because I think it's common, and I don't blame people for it. Right, like human nature, we want shortcuts. Right, someone might say to you like, "You've done this before. Like you've done it many times. You've been successful at it. Just give me the list of things I need to have or do to be successful." And what they don't want to hear, and I get it, but what they don't want to hear is you need to practice and do hard work, because they're like, well, why should I have to do that if you already know how it works? You've been successful. Just tell me the shortcut. Just give me that. But the shortcut is like you need to actually do the work, and the sooner you understand that and do the work, the more practice you get at it, right? It's not just you snap your fingers and you have these qualities, because exactly as you said, what's going to happen when you say you could trick the interviewer, they give you the job, what's going to happen the very first day at work?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And the most important thing, people so overestimate their memory, in the sense like they think they remember everything they learned 10 years ago or 4 years ago or 2 years ago. And so many things are happening in the life, like you get just overwhelmed and you can always forget about the basic concepts. And it's so important
Absolutely.
to brush up. It's just like, if you have a dirt over a surface, then definitely it will look very dirty. But if you clean it up, it will look exactly the same shiny way it used to look when you bought it. So it's similar in our memory, right? It's, the things, but it goes somewhere down down that storage box. Then you need to just brush it up and then you're ready again. But that, I would I will be surprised. Like, you might be knowing, right? You're already hiring, right? In the organization, it takes so much time to hire a good engineer, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people just come unprepared. Unprepared in the sense they touch base on basic things, in the sense of what they do in daily basis, but when you go back to the core concepts, then there is some trouble going on.
Yep, absolutely. And something like I've said this publicly, like on live streams and stuff, and maybe in recorded videos, but the when I interview people, I have found that like I don't ask trick questions, right? My coding interview questions and even like the behavioral ones, I don't do trick questions, and I don't do trick questions or even what I would consider difficult questions in programming rounds because I it's unfortunate, but like I don't even need to do tricky questions and it filters out candidates very fast. So something as simple as like literally like make me a linked list like in any language you want because you've told me that you can program, right? So pick your most comfortable language, make me a linked list. And you would be amazed at how many people just struggle with it. And it's one of those things too. If someone had programmed and they were like, I can do that very easily. Um, Even if someone didn't had never made a linked list, if they wanted to ask questions like what, tell me some behavioral traits about a linked list, like what should it do? And I could explain it to them. They could code it very fast. I would say if you program before, it should come pretty quick. And if someone aces it and they're like, well, that was the easiest question, I can at least build on that question and say, oh, how would if we switched it from a singly linked list to a doubly linked list? Like what changes about that, right? I can extend that question, but I would like literally most of the time, I don't need to do that because people struggle with the very basic concepts of like just having things point to other references, like just the basics. And I think it's honestly just because they didn't prepare. Maybe they focused so much of their effort into like how did I get my resume visible to get the interview, right? So much energy goes into that, then they get the interview and it's like they haven't actually prepared to go code something. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
But the thing is, like, you're absolutely right. And but even every step is important. But what happens is when you start interviewing, it's a 2 months process, right? And you have different rounds which expects different things from you. And what happens
Yeah.
is life also takes over. So sometimes you're not in the mood. We are humans, right? It's not like we are always in the best energy and we can do the best. I always say, like, like if you want to climb Mount Everest, you would have to become that person who will climb the Mount Everest. The Mount Everest will never come down. So in the same way, if you want to crack, let's say, one of the biggest organizations in the world, or some fancy startup, or some AI startup which is very popular these days, if they have requirements, you would have to fulfill those requirements. If you do, you're in. If you don't, it's 0 or 1, right? That doesn't work like
Yeah.
another way. So, and this is the reason I wrote this book, because I have there are 13 chapters and 3 bonus chapters in the book, which really which really entails different rounds and what is the requirements, what is the different mindset required to crack to go into this interview and to crack this interview, what is
Mm.
expectations, how you should behave, not behave, and other things which are like commonly asked questions and so on. But even with the behavioral questions, I have tried to give a tool, in the sense that how to think about that. Like, what is, if someone asks this question to you, what are they really expecting? And are you
Ah,
that
okay.
person who can really who can really answer this question in a way they are expecting? Because if you are not, then you need to become that person. You need to. And I've also seen, like, everyone has really great experience. Most of the people have great experience. It's just they don't write it, and they don't reflect back to see what I did. Because it's not like hiring managers ask questions which are out of nowhere. It's simple questions,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a good point, right? It's like the mindset that you have to have when going through these is understanding what people are like. Basically, people are trying to extract information out of you to gauge the value that you'll be able to bring to the company, right? So there are reasons behind the questions, and having the right mindset about the question. It's like, if you think about questions on an exam in school, right? Basically, you're trying to write the correct answer down. And in an interview, it's a little bit different because it's not just, in a coding round, you just put the final answer, you just write the code, you don't say anything, you just wrote it because you memorized it or something. And then they go, "Oh, excellent job, here's a perfect score." They might say, "It's good you got the code. Now walk us through it. Now debug it. Now let's talk about the test cases. Let's talk about why you picked this algorithm. Like, where does it fall down short?" Like, there's so much other stuff that goes into that. And I think to your point about like mindset and understanding why you're being asked these questions enables you. I love that you keep saying like you want to become this person, right? Because when you are this person, it really entails that you understand why you're coding these things. You're understanding why these experiences from your career or education or even, side projects and things like that, why these things are so valuable. And then you can talk about them almost like it's just a natural thing because you have become this person. And I love that framing. It's not, again, it's not show me the shortcut. It's become the person.
Yeah, and frankly speaking, like that's the fair reality. What I've learned so far, right? There is no shortcut, and if there is a shortcut, the quicker you reach there, the faster you will come back as well. So, so that's how I feel about it. And because the reason is like what happens is when you prepare, preparation leads to confidence, and what happens is your confidence leads to attitude of like I can figure out anything in life now, right? And when you are open to new learning and you're curious, then you're able to figure out pretty much everything. Even if you don't know stuff today, and today we live in a digital age, we can anyone can crack any company in the world, no doubt. No matter they have computers, they have done computer science engineering degree or not. I have worked with really phenomenal engineers who are from the boot camp, who are from the history background, and they switched to software engineering, who had nothing to do with computer science at all. So I really want to break that myth as well, that only people who do computer science engineering and who are gifted with, who started coding at 12 can become great engineers. It's not the case at all. It's no, not at all.
Right. So from your experience then, like do these like I know you're saying people can be successful from these different backgrounds. Have you observed that it's necessarily helpful, or would you say it's like it's a personal thing? Like if you want to go to university, then go do that. If you want to go to boot camp, then go do that. Have you seen any sort of differences, or do any of them set people apart, or is it truly a personal preference?
I think there is one difference, which is really, which you can see it clearly. I don't know, like what happens is when you go to computer science engineering, and you're especially in India, like you are going through a lot of preparation for the exams to get into university and whatsoever. What it does, it gives you perseverance and it gives you grit to go for it.
Okay.
And that grit and perseverance you carry all your life. So things which seems like difficult to other people because you're used to working so hard, it just seems like it's easier to you. But the thing is, it's equally hard for you as well. It's just you have exercised that muscle in your brain, and you're so used to solving these hard problems, or you're so used to working like effort, like very putting a lot of effort on those things, that it simply seems like you are doing it effortlessly. But believe me, nothing is effortless. Even I was,
That's a
I was, yeah, I was listening to Roger Federer's speech yesterday, and he said the same thing. Like it might seem like it's effortless, but there's a lot of effort which went into make it look like it's effortless. So preparation is the key, hands down on that. Yeah.
very, very interesting, right? So I want to repeat this back because I think it's a good point. So, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, right? But it sounds like from your perspective, it's not like say university or college, depending where you are, right? It's not that these are innately better things, but they are they're a pathway that will for most people sort of force you to exercise grit, right? You're going to be challenged, whether it's getting into there, whether it's the projects or the exams are hard, but you're basically for a prolonged period of time set up with a bunch of challenges that you have to overcome. So again, not that college or university is superior to other paths, but it basically forces you to exercise grit and perseverance to get through these things. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it's a fair statement, but I would like to say it's not necessarily true in terms of like only universities can produce that grit and perseverance in you, right?
Right,
There
right,
could be
right.
definitely other things you are working upon. Let's say you somebody, and there are a lot of examples like somebody dropped out and they built a company, or someone was. It's all about really what I'm trying to say is all. It's all about the work you put in. If you can find
Absolutely.
yourself in an environment which forces you to put a lot of work and to become better at something, you will even surpass people who have done university. No questions asked, right? It's just these things like put you in that environment which makes you work hard, and that's pretty much it. And that's why it's always said, you are the best of five people around you and things like that. Because when everyone else is working hard around you, you're like, oh, I should definitely work hard now.
Yeah, that's and no, and thank you for calling that out. Right, it's not so university and college can be these paths that do provide that option, but it does not mean that there aren't other things that provide the same thing or perhaps even better for different individuals. It comes back to you put in the effort, you put in the consistency, and over time you kind of train yourself to kind of go through these things. I recall, and I've told people that when I went to university for computer engineering because, especially for me at the time, it was like if I want to be in software, and at the time I wanted to be in hardware, but it was like there's no other way to do this unless you have a university degree. And in Canada, actually, if you want to become a professional engineer, so it's a professional designation, you aren't even allowed to call yourself a software engineer unless you have the professional designation. In Ontario, one of the provinces in Canada, there's an organization that will go around to companies and say you cannot have these job titles that say software engineer unless they are truly software engineers.
Wow.
It's a professional designation like a doctor or a lawyer. So for me, like growing up and kind of going, well, if this is the direction I want to go in, it for me it meant I have to go to university. You have to go to an accredited school, so on and so forth. But the reality is, I did that. You have to go take an ethics test. You have to get hours under a professional engineer, and I never did those last things. But so in Canada, I could not legally call myself a professional engineer because I'm not. But do I do software engineering work? Absolutely. And so that's the distinction. You can do work labeled that it is of software engineering type, but
Hmm.
you cannot be a software engineer. So I wanted to share that because that forced me into a university path. But I've always told people that I didn't like university. I didn't feel like I was learning in school, but I felt like my internships I was learning a lot. But when you talked about perseverance, it really made me think that school for me absolutely helped with that. I went from in high school having like top grades, not having to try, to university being like every class was like, you're about to fail. And I remember being like, I have to work very hard to survive now. Like that's how it felt. If I've never had to do this before and now I have to do it, and it was 5 years straight of just like how do I survive? And it taught me that if I put in the effort, which I never had to do before, I was fortunate that way. If I put in the effort, the good things will come. So I hadn't really thought about it that way until you mentioned it, but that's what university taught me was you have to work hard. And I watched my math grades that used to be like 95 in high school drop to like 50, and over the course of university get back up to like in the 80s, just and over time, right? They didn't happen overnight. It took 5 years for them to recover. So had to work hard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the environment does really plays a role. Also, I have seen individuals. I like to say that I have a friend. He's a really he was into really he's a really great photographer in a way that he published some photographs in National Geography channel,
Awesome.
and the level of detail he knows about photography is so much that later on when he switched to computer science engineering, because he met me as a colleague in one of the organization, right? uh, he was telling me one day that the level of effort I put into master the craft of like taking photos, it really helped him to become who he is today. Because the reason is, the computer science or any programming language does need the same level of details, and the level of hard work he had to put into go through the boot camp and learn. So I then reflected back and I saw like, oh, that's basically the same quality. It's just the hard work and the perseverance and the grit this dude has for his own craft that got carried away in this profession now. Because
Right.
there's a saying like, what you do one as you do. The saying is, it's like, uh, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So it's basically, if you do something, even in the small things at home, right? If you like to take care of your house, you like to keep it clean and everything. I think that also reflects back in your professional life as well. You like to keep things managed. You like to keep things clean. So yeah.
It's this idea that like even like the smallest details in life, the smallest actions you take, if everything you do is like looking for a shortcut in something, or you don't put effort into things, like that carries over into other stuff. But if you yeah, I get the analogy there. I think it's really good that like you can, and this goes, it all comes back, you brought up this point that I think is going to be a huge takeaway for me, right? It's such a good way to phrase, you want to become this person, right? So if you're imagining what this person is that embodies all of these things that you want to accomplish, right? It's it's this buildup of all the things that you're doing in life, even small things like paying attention to detail, being curious. Like, you can be exercising these things in every part of your day to day. And the more that you are doing that, embracing being curious, embracing, solving difficult things, like, I don't know, like you could pick something around the house. You have to go mount something on the wall, and it's going to be very challenging to figure out how to do this properly because, I don't know, whatever constraints you have. But going and doing these things and being curious about how to solve it, going through the problem solving steps, it sounds kind of funny because I'm trying to pick something completely different from programming, but practicing these types of things over and over in different aspects of life allows you to have these qualities that very much carry over into programming and software engineering. So yeah, it's I love this idea of like you have to become become the person, right? It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it starts very in with the small steps. Like, when you have to move a mountain, you have to start by carrying stones, right? And that's very a simple way to put on. Like, if you have a big target to achieve, you would have to start small, look at what's missing, what can I do here, and then you would have to
Right.
act like what a person who will become that would act like. And then you would find the checklist,
Absolutely.
right? So let's say I want to let someone want to crack let's say Netflix or Amazon or Microsoft. There's a checklist for that. It's not like it's in the air or they ask something out of the universe. It's very finite. And that's what made me realize that it's not like this is a skill which has some magic going on. It's very simple. You just need to know the real what do you say, the real circumference of what needs to be learned.
Right. That absolutely makes sense. Okay, we talked about persevering through things and putting in the effort, and The other thing that you mentioned too, especially early on in the conversation, right? Like going through interview rounds absolutely takes time, right? It's not, and some company you kind of talked up to like at different companies and stuff. It can be different, right? Some, especially smaller companies, might be able to move faster, but especially at some of the big tech companies, like it can feel pretty slow. So, how do you approach like balancing all of that going on? Because usually, too, you're applying to multiple companies, you might be interviewing with multiple companies, you might have take home assignments and things like that. How do you approach whether it's from mindset or other things that you're trying to do to make sure that you can stay on top of all of that and just keep your head on?
I will tell you, like I have interviewed quite a lot, right? And I've taken interviews and given on the both the sides. When you do interview quite a lot on different scale of organization, you start seeing patterns, especially in the home take home assignment, right? If I talk about front end, there will be very similar components which will be used in the different types of applications. Like you would have form, let's say you will
Okay.
have table, you will have pagination going on, or things like that, right? What I how I used to save time was I created my own kind of a library in a way where I just did it the way the best I could do from my experience and learning. And whenever a similar question would come up, I will just pick it up and put it there. So what will happen? And I also created my scaffold, like a starting project, which would have my own settings and stuff in that, and which would really
Okay.
help me to kickstart my project very quickly without thinking like, oh, I need to put this new approach there, now these are the new standards and so on. And of course you need to keep updating that personal library, whatever you created, on personal packages or personal components, whatever you created for your project. And when the opportunity comes to you for a take home assignment, you just copy and paste and you ship it. The reason I'm saying you need to do it is because there is a next round which where they take the interview about it. So if you would have not done it yourself, you are preparing
Right.
yourself for failure. But if you would have written each line of that code, understanding it very well, you have written the test for it very well, then you can explain it what, and you can also tell like what is missing, because most of the time
Right.
that's the question asked, like if you would have given more time, how would you do it better? But if you have not written it yourself, you would have not that sense, or you would not have that sense of understanding what could I have done better, because you have not done it in the first place. So
Right. But it literally comes back to you have to become the person, right? If you wanted to be the person that would be a good fit in this job, the right person for that job would not have like cheated to just go get the answer from somewhere else. They would literally be the person who coded it up, did the research about what needed to happen, put the time and effort into understanding what they were building, wrote the tests, and like, they have an idea of what they put together. That is the person that you need to become. So again, if you're looking for the the shortcut and you're like, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT and I got the answer, like if you're going to do that, you better spend the time understanding it so that it becomes your answer, not just
yeah,
copy and
exactly.
pasted it with no understanding. And again, like, so I'm not trying to say ChatGPT is a tool you can't or shouldn't use, but you need to have the understanding because the person that you're trying to be is going to have that.
I always say, what is the toughest question in the interview? Which comes after your answer. So that's the toughest question of the interview. So if you have not prepared yourself, the answer you
Right.
have given, you are not that person yet, and you don't know about it. You just read it somewhere and gave it. When the counter question will come, you will fail miserably. There's no doubt about
And
it.
it's going to be super awkward.
Exactly, exactly. And I have seen it multiple times, right? People would come up with an answer, look at into chat gpt, and sometimes people are also like looking into chat gpt during the interview somehow, and then you ask the counter question, and that person is let me think for 20 minutes or let me think
Yeah.
for a few minutes, and then you know that it's not sinking in. I mean, this is a sad truth, but like a lot of people are doing that, but you know it immediately, like if someone is cheating or someone is trying to do something. So it's very important to be that person, because okay, you cleared the interview, you got the job, but on the ground level, when you will be asked to do those tasks, then it's gonna be a very bad time.
Yeah, you need to become that person, and I think the sooner that people realize that it's within reach, like you just, like anyone else, you put in the time, the effort, the practice, and it will come. Like, and you will continue to get better. So as long as you just accept, like, yeah, I have to do work, and that's okay, we all do it, like,
I mean,
then you're just closer to becoming that person.
when I moved to Germany, I started waking up at 5 a.m. right every day, and I've been trying to do stick to it most of the days of the year, especially in summer. Winters, I move it half an hour later. But when I was interviewing during 2020, I really made a point. I was waking up early, preparing for the interviews, really putting my effort, brushing my knowledge, going back to the old school days, remembering about data structures, graphs, trees, linked lists, doing all those questions. And then I really saw a lot of successes. So after that, I gave, I think, I gave interviews for 6 organizations. I got 5 offer letters. So
Wow.
so it's not like the hard work always pays. And that I always like to say people. And as you were saying, there is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. I mean, people like to find, oh, give me those 10 questions which will get me into this job. Okay, I gave you the question, I gave you the answer, but if you don't understand the answer, it will not work out.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. I think the last thing I want to kind of dive into in our conversation here is, and you brought this up earlier, that you've had different experiences at different places, and the fact that even interviews look different at different places, scale of company, right? Like how, whether it's a startup or closer to big tech or that kind of thing. What is it about, like, when people are going through this process, they are of course interviewing at a company, but if we flip that idea around, like, how should people approach, like, trying to figure out where they would be a good fit? Like, where should people be going to work? How do they navigate that kind of perspective?
Oh, that's a really great question, because I would say every person is not made for like every kind of company. So every
Right.
company expects different kind of effort, and your behavior, and every company has different vision, different value. So if you are going into startups, you need to get ready for, it's not a typical 9 to 5 job, right? If you're joining a startup, that's a fair truth about it. So you need to see where you would learn the most, what are your priorities in life at that particular time, wherever you are, right? Because if you are starting up,
Right.
I started with my career like doing freelancing, and then I joined a startup, right? And that made me learn a lot, because I was there to learn and understand really how the products are built, and I've always worked in a product based company. So I'm all about, I like to really put my energy, because they say like we are all made of stardust and it's all energy. So I have a limited time on this earth, that's how I see it. And I would like to put my energy on things I would really feel happy about, that I was able to create some impact with my life. So when I'm joining the organization, the factors which I have figured out over the year is like vision of the company, like are they solving a great problem? Is it a big issue?
Mm.
Is it worth that I put my effort into it? Would I be happy putting my 8 hours out of 16 waking hours a day? That's one thing. Then the second factor for me becomes people. Are the people I am going to work with, are they open to discussions? Are they humble? Would I enjoy working with them? Would they do they have the mindset of exploring new things, or if
Right.
and also like how is the growth works in that organization? Like every person is different. I have also seen people who don't want promotions in their career. They are chill, which may sound weird, but it happens in Europe. People just decline promotions as well. That's okay. And there's nothing wrong or right. It's just what is the priority of yours at this point in time, right? Um, Vision of the company, people, and the most important thing, one of the most important thing is the culture. What's the culture of the
Yeah.
organization? Is Do I align with that culture? Is like the culture would be great, but what if I think differently? Or what if, and that is for that is what the interview is for. You are, they are interviewing you, you're also interviewing them, that you can understand, would I fit here? So for example,
Right.
in terms of startups, in terms of scale ups, in terms of mid-sized companies, in terms of big corporations, or it also depends on, is it a service based company or is it a product based company? That also makes a big difference, because if you're going into service based company, then you would deal with different clients. But if you are going to product based company, they might have different products, but that will be part of very similar suit, right? You will be working in one product most of your time, and then probably you could switch to another product. So
Right.
it's altogether, depends what you want. What would you like to experience? I really recommend people who are just starting up to go into startups, because that's where you learn the most. You are in your early 20s, so you have your higher energy. Is not big responsibilities on you at the moment, in terms of like family and all those kids and stuff like that. I mean, that is true for most of the people. There are always exceptions, I would like to say that, but
Of
depending
course.
upon where are you in your life, make the right decision, and then just make your life in the way you would like to live it. Because I totally don't agree, or I don't totally support things like you need to work 24/7. There is a phase, I have also done that when I was starting up in my career. You do
Mhm.
it for a while, and then you learn from it, and then that's what I said, the grit and the perseverance come, you gain that perseverance and grit, and then the hard things becomes easier for you over the time. And
Right.
what you were taking 16 hours to accomplish, now you know the tricks, and you know how to optimize your time, you get it done in 2 hours. So it's just about practice. Practice gives you efficiency. That's how I feel about it.
That's such a good way to put it too. I think when people have asked me my like, because I'm at Microsoft now, obviously in big tech, and I think maybe people have the perception that because I'm at Microsoft that I would encourage every single human being who wants to get into software development, like you must go to Microsoft. And like I think Microsoft is great, absolutely. That's why I'm here. But do I do I recommend that it's the best place to start? I you know it's a great company and they take care of people that are early in career for sure, but my own experience put me through startups, and I think that it would not be a fair statement if I said, oh, just yeah, like absolutely start at Microsoft, like that's the only thing you should be focused on. Like yeah, I want you to get to Microsoft. I think it would be a great place to work at, but my recommendation from my own experience is that startups taught me so much that I truly just don't think you would get those experiences at Microsoft or Amazon or Facebook or any other big tech company. And it does come back to, yeah, at a startup, more likely than not, you're going to be working a ton
Hmm.
because you're in this mode where and this is most startups. I'm not saying it's a rule. It's really hard to make generalizations, right? But most startups, they're fighting to survive because they're not yet stable with income, like they're profitable, right? Like they might have investment, but that's like that's burning away. So you're in this mode where you are part of a group of people trying to make something survive.
Hmm.
And if you believe in what you're doing and you're enjoying it, you are going to find yourself in this position where you are working your butt off.
Yeah.
And yeah, that might be a period of your life, right? I'm not saying that this is what you do for the rest of eternity, but going through that is going to teach you so many things, and you're going to have so much practice that you might not otherwise get. So my recommendation for people as a general statement would be, yeah, absolutely. If you can find a startup, obviously consider the risks and stuff like that. But I think that
Definitely.
from a learning and experience perspective, startups are like a fascinating opportunity.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and especially I would say you should also look for the product you're working for into, or or what you are developing, what you want to do. For me, it's all about impact, right? If I'm working on something that brings a change in people's life, or that moves a little bit, if I am able to put a little contribution into that, I'm really happy, because there are two things which are really important. One is the time, you cannot get it back, and second is if you could
Right.
help someone make their life easier. That's how I feel. These are two things which I really appreciate. If like you're bringing an impact in those two categories, and of course another one is clean energy, sustainability. That's also very close to my heart as well. So yeah, I mean, and for everyone it could be different. I'm not saying these are the golden
Right.
rules or you should
Yeah.
do this. No. It's you should figure out, sit down. That's how what I did. I sat down one day. I basically started writing what I would like to do with my life, right? And then you come up with a list of few things, and then you have to realize that we all are mortal, I think, in some way or form, and then make sure that you put your energy in which you what you really want to put your energy into. So, and then I
Right.
think it could be a meaningful life. I'm also trying my best. It's not like anyone has figured. I don't think anyone ever figures out. It's just it becomes easier over the time.
I love that. I think that's a great perspective. And no, this has been, I think, a very enlightening conversation. Like I said, I think one of the things that is a huge takeaway for me going through this is I think I have a better way to try and frame up for people um, about becoming the person, not just looking for the shortcut that makes you look like the person. So I think I'm going to be leveraging that as I as I go forward and try to help others. So I wanted to say thank you so much for making the time to chat with me. I'm gonna get links and stuff from you. I know I have a couple, especially for your book, that we'll make sure is in the description and the comments and stuff, so people can check that out. But for people that are watching this, if you want to share with them like where they can check you out and get in touch with you.
Yes, so you can find me on any social media handle. You can find me by the name Dynamic Singh that I got during my university days. There's a story behind it, but yeah, that's my social media handle. It's also dynamicsing.com. You can find about the book on at interviewchampion.com, and also the things we talked about regarding startups, scale ups, mid-sized companies. I've also covered all these things to clear up the water for you, so that you can understand which kind of company should I target, where should do I fit right now. And yeah,
Awesome.
there's a special offer for your audience, as we decided I really wanted to give it back. So that will be valid for like for 2 weeks, and yeah, so you can avail that. There will be discount whenever I launch. I'm in the process of recording my audiobook at the moment. I have not decided on what will be the special offer, but definitely it will be something good for everyone. So yeah.
Cool. No, I really appreciate that, and I'm sure that that viewers will as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, this is a really great conversation. So I do appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.